Okay. Hello and welcome to the 6th Podcasting is War episode. In this episode, we'll talk about My Hero Academia. Here's your host, F, and the other host, Critical. Say
That's
hello.
me.
And today we have two guests, our two dear friends, Ian and Ace. Ian, introduce yourself first.
Hi there, my name's Ian Waffles. You can find me on Twitter or on YouTube at Ian Waffles, and I make My Hero stuff, and so just really happy to be here and talk about it.
And now Ace.
Hello there, I'm Ace.
He also
Like
enjoys the
utility.
series.
He's just here.
I write treads sometimes. There are My
He's
Hero
just
Academia.
glad to be included.
And to start us off, we are all fans of My Hero Academia, so this will all be just a nice, comfy
It'll be
fan discussion why this
big
series
ol'
is so good.
dick-sucking session. It's not going to be any criticism at all.
Yeah, it will be criticism free.
So if you're bored
Probably.
by that, you can look up the recent video of why Black Clover is better than My Hero in every way possible. If you want to get your My Hero criticism on, of course. But here is not the case.
So I was gonna start us with the introduction, how we got into the series and what were our expectations. I would say let's start with Ian.
Okay, cool. So my introduction to the series was through a Rebel Taxi review where he was like, here's a bunch of shows I've been watching. And he mentioned My Hero Academia, and he specifically called Midoriya Jake Schlong. And so for about season 1, that's just what I referred to Midoriya as. Didn't really think much of the series, thought it was just kind of okay. And once I was like, oh my gosh, who cares about the school stuff? Let's watch all the fighting. Let's watch all the villains. So I was a very loser MHA fan at the time.
Very small brain.
Yeah, very small brained. But eventually we got to season 2, and I specifically just remember the scene with, obviously, Deku versus Todoroki, and just the moment when All Might said that, Midoriya, don't tell me all this time you were trying to save young Todoroki. It just all clicked in my brain, and I've never gone back. I've fallen in love with the series ever since, specifically Deku, and I just love it. And that's kind of how I got into the series.
All right, I guess I will give my story now. I watched it when the first season first came out in 2016. And I'd only heard about it like a few weeks before the first episode came out because people were like, this is a Shonen Jump series. And I'm like, oh, Shonen Jump, that's that magazine that Dragon Ball is from. And then I watched the first episode and I was just like, wow, that got me kind of emotional. It was like very, very golden age kind of not whimsy and wonder and just All Might gave me good feelings inside. And then episode 2 came out, and then I cried. So that's how I got to like the series. I've never not liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever not liked anything about it, almost.
Nothing like that stands out in your head as like, this is a problem with the series. Just more like, obviously, little niggles here and there, I would assume.
Well, I was maybe a little hasty in saying that, because after season 2, I was starting to like come up with some criticisms, and then of course season 4 came out, and I had other criticisms of that. But with season 2 especially, it was like the whole backlash because that's when the series truly blew up, and
yeah.
there was like a big pushback against it, and I was also like, well, it's not the most logically consistent in regards to the battles,
Right.
To some such effect.
Mhm.
And some of those are still true and some are not. So
Cool. And so you're basically just talking about your experience from going from the anime, because you hadn't really reached the manga at this point, right?
I did not read the manga until the
Mirio fight, right?
the slideshow episode in season 4.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Now
gotcha.
let Ace talk too.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't get into My Hero Academia until before season 2 aired. I don't know. I think season 1 may have still been airing at the time. I'm not sure. I feel like it was because I was really excited to see where it would go, but I could have just been catching up and getting really into the episodes. I don't think I've ever disliked the show. I've always liked it, but like as I got away from the anime for like because I wouldn't rewatch it, so I'd go a while. I'd hear other opinions about it and be like, oh, maybe it isn't as good as I remember. And then I rewatched it last year, and that was amazing, and I love it even more now. I don't know what else to say.
You don't have to because now it's my turn. Um, so I got into the series by looking at the seasonal anime chart in 2016 and seeing a name I've heard being hyped up for a long time already because it's a weekly Shonen Jump manga. And I was like in this stage where I was already super jaded by people hyping up shit and me getting constantly disappointed. And I was like, let's see how this goes. And I actually ended up really enjoying it after episode 2. In fact, I liked episode 2 so much, I went and read the manga immediately. Back then, there was up to the school festival. That was where the manga was at. So I read that whole thing in the original manga. And I was like a fan of it. I consider the series very good, but not like as great as I think it is now. And my opinion of the anime seasons has improved upon rewatches, especially season 2, which I was super harsh on when it came out as a manga reader. Like I took a huge shit on it for certain adaptation reasons, even though it's actually like super good, especially after I realized after rewatch.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I think
I've always liked it.
Season 2 was when the series like first began to really expand its world and cast and really like build upon its foundations, and that's why there's things to be criticized there as well as like things to be admired about it, and that's probably why that's the point where it really gained a lot of traction.
And it's consistently gorgeous. I think, especially in the sports festival, when you have things like a cavalry battle, which in your head, I think most people would think like, okay, this will be kind of maybe like low effort looking. They'll just be running around. But like the way they would just angle these shots of like Bakugo just whipping out an attack or following the movements and building up with Yusei Run, it really made moments that I feel like in the manga were just like, oh, that's good. It really made the MHA hype beast that people kind of remember it as, because most people got into it in season 2.
Yeah, like everyone really knows the like Yutaka Nakamura cuts, like the big Sakuga moments.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in season 2, there was like a lot of smaller moments of like really solid animation.
Yeah, to where it made sure you never fell asleep.
Solid animation, that's a bit of an oxymoron. Like fluid or expressive animation.
Yeah.
That really gave it a lot of energy to it that I think was fairly unique for its genre.
You're talking about season 2. I always think about like season 1, where like they elevate scenes in the manga really, really well, using like mood lighting and brightening up the background and everything. Like it really like for instance in I think it was the first episode when you see Kid Midoriya looking at the screen and he's rewatching that infamous scene of All Might saving everyone, and he's getting really emotional, and like the swelling of the music in sync with the brightening of the background it just really enhances that moment more than the manga did.
Yeah, it's easily more iconic in the
anime. And then they do that effect where like his hair gets blown back metaphorically, and it's like it enhances that. Oh my god, this is so amazing to Midoriya.
Yeah, you feel the inspiration that he feels.
It's really going the extra mile to hammer home the effects on like the minds of these aspiring heroes and everything.
That's also how I feel when I see All Might on my screen.
Definitely. Well, and also in regards to because F mentioned like being a manga reader and kind of looking at season 2. What I really think season 1 and season 2 don't get enough credit for, or we don't remember it as much, is it really actually laid the foundation for many fans of how they viewed certain characters and certain scenes. Because, for example, Endeavor. Most people understood Endeavor as a really strong, badass hero because of season 2, but that fight with him and the Nomus doesn't exist in the manga. So if you read the manga, you don't get to see Endeavor fight until chapter like 190, which is insane. Which is insane to think about.
I remember when that scene first came out in that episode, and I was like, I watch a lot of anime reactions, and like with My Hero Academia especially, I've watched
Yeah.
like maybe around 10 different people react to it, so I have like a good gauge of exactly how people's moment-to-moment reaction experience was. And like several of the people I saw when there was that Endeavor scene in the Stain arc, they were like, "Oh, why am I rooting for Endeavor? Oh, Endeavor is so cool! Like I didn't expect this."
Yeah, and it's
And
crazy
it's
that
all
they
thanks to
planted
the
that
anime.
seed. Yeah, it's crazy that they planted that seed of like, oh, Endeavor's a good hero, but he's not a good person. That's a dichotomy. When you honestly don't really get that in the manga because you don't get to see him in action be a good hero. You just kind of see the aftermath of the fights. Another thing, yeah,
It's only a benefit to the story, really, that
yeah.
was added.
And season 2 also did something that I completely forgot about this. So Momo's entire character arc in the manga, it's built off one panel where Deku's like, "Oh, Momo got like beat real quick by Tokoyami. Anyway, let's move on." But she has a whole arc through the rest of the series that is based on this offhanded comment. But in the anime, you remember it as like going through her head. Okay, I need to use this attack. Oh, I need to use this. And then she steps across and they say, "Momo, you're out." And you're like, oh, you really feel for her, but
Yeah, they
that
really took
it
their
doesn't
time.
exist in the manga.
They really took their time with the sports festivals, especially the individual battles. So like, it's a point of criticism with the series that like I don't remember the names of all the characters in the class 1A,
It's just people being stupid.
but like through that arc in season 2, because I saw all those individual battles and like remembered them pretty vividly, I could already remember all the characters in the class.
Yeah, even if just by quirk and design or personality, like they have such big personalities that even a character such as Invisible Girl, you understand the idea of like she really wants to stand out because haha she's invisible, and she like talks to Ojiro and they kind of have a nice little friendship, and it's just it's what makes Class 1A so unique is that it exists as its own character, and then each little character inside kind of gets more development. So
yeah, exactly. And like Ojiro even has like the running joke of him being very plain, and like he has his more eccentric and quirky friends like kind of make fun of him for being like a very laid back kind of normal guy, which makes him like stand out via being plain almost.
Yeah, of course.
And the series does that a lot in general with the class, that like all there's like you different friend cliques. There's like Kaminari and Jiro, and then Kaminari and Kirishima and Bakugo,
and Kaminari and Mineta
and Ochako. Like they all have like different people they're closer to, and like the little mini groups, and then they all have their like complete group dynamic, and it's shown pretty consistently throughout. That like, makes it all feel very essential.
Yeah, it allows you to actually get attached to them in ways that I know people a lot of times like to crap on the provisional license exam, but what I adore about that arc in general, while I have problems with it, is simply that it comes after the camp arc where the kids were put through the ringer and they had to like desperately try to survive. But now they're in this arc and they show that through being so willing to sacrifice themselves for each other, they uplift each other as a class and they hold each other together. And so it just felt so nice to see like Kaminari overcome his his one gag of like overblowing his brain to where it's like, no, he thought about this and he has this pointer and shooter. Or you have Aoyama, who has been in the background, but he always comes through at the end, and to have him do that, but then see that, oh, he feels like he understands that he's kind of a coward and he wants to stand out and be like the rest of the group.
And Aoyama, who has like a very flamboyant, extravagant kind of personality, he like contributes to his friends, to his class, via quote unquote standing out by becoming like a literal beacon for them all to see.
Which contrasts that he's always hiding and stuff like that. So like it's a facade that he's trying to uphold, and you tie that into his problem with his quirk that it hurts his stomach or it would leak out without his belt, and you have this idea of someone who just by these little pieces that are thrown throughout and these little developments with these characters and moments that you will remember, it allows you to understand this character even though he's not given the Todoroki treatment,
There's constantly like small microcosms of character arcs for very minor characters that like inform you that these are like real, thoroughly fleshed out characters, at least like behind the scenes, even if they're not always shown. When they are shown, they're always developed, like a character like Momo, or a character like, well, Todoroki is a very major character, but like,
Aoyama,
every time
Tokoyami,
he makes an appearance, even if he isn't central, his character arc is being like advanced pretty concretely.
Yeah.
Aoyama is like a perfect example for this too, because as you said, he's like very flamboyant. That's why he doesn't really belong in any of the squads. Like we have the Bug squad and the Deku squad.
Yeah,
And the
he's
He
kind
has
of
to
a
try
weirdo.
really hard to be in Deku's squad by feeding him
Yeah.
cheese.
Yeah, and then he does like the cheese thing, and he talks to Deku about like that his quirk isn't fit for him because he always gets stomach ache and stuff, so they can relate to each other. That's how he bonded with him, and that was a really
And then
nice
he
moment.
actually, he becomes part of that clique, yeah, and you can like
Yeah.
actually see how he like a person who didn't fit in like actually became part of that group dynamic.
He's now in
And it
scenes where he
works
wouldn't be before. Yeah.
because we are so intimately familiar with how that group dynamic is already.
Yeah. Like, one of my favorite things about after the Aoyama thing is it could have been as simple as, because it's like, and that's how me and Aoyama became friends. Now we'll never see him again, but or, see him talking. But no, instead, literally the very next issue, you have Mina breakdancing, and Aoyama's like, hey, why don't you go learn from her or whatever? And then he starts breakdancing with Deku, because he's his friend and he wants to hang out with him. And you just get this it's this cute feeling of this character who just wants to belong and hang out. Or later when he's like, oh, our rope is frayed. That must show the true bond of our friendship, because he just wants to be included. And yeah, it's really sweet.
Who else wants to introduce a topic?
I was just going to continue sort of that was the characters and their quirks tying into their personalities is a really cool and unique thing that I think Horikoshi does extremely well, and it's one of the most refreshing aspects about My Hero Academia, I think, because you see characters like, I can't remember his name, I already suck.
We just mentioned that people forget their names, and you will forget
what quirk?
He has the,
just name the quirk.
He eats like loads of sugar and he gets strong.
Oh, that guy.
Sato.
So he has a hobby which involves him baking, and then all the girls in the dorm love him, and I thought that was a really nice touch.
He's the room king.
Yeah. And Sato means sugar. So.
Nice.
Damn.
It's just little things like that. It's like goes an extra mile to make the series really special, and it's just so fantastic.
Well,
and
yeah, go ahead.
Quirks, like defining personality, or like who a person is and how they like portray themselves to others is like a very central theme, because there is like an implication in the world that quirks have a direct impact on your personality, and definitely the way that you're seen by others, like how Shinso was seen as kind of a shady person just because he has like a quirk that involves manipulating people, even though he is the goodest boy.
Yeah, and then you have someone like Monoma, who was initially told, like, well, you can't be a hero because you'd have to rely on everybody, so he decides to be shady, because he's like, well, I'm gonna forever be... I love his mentality of, I am forever stuck as a side character, but it creates moments like these where the side character can upstage the main lead, but it works really well for his personality and his quirk of, like, you have all these shades of someone being a hero and how the quirks affect them, that you can even have someone like Shinso who rejects that sneakiness, but then you have someone like Monoma who's like, no, I will be sneaky, I will connive, I will put down class A, so long as I'm allowed to be a hero and help people, it's what I gotta do. And that person's not told that they're not a hero,
Exactly. And then you have someone like Bakugo, who is blessed with a very wonderful quirk and sees himself as a genius, awesome, amazing god because of it, versus someone like Deku, who didn't have a quirk, and therefore even after he gets it, he doesn't really have any kind of like high opinion of himself because of it.
That was something I had a bit of a dissonance when I was re-experiencing the series. Was Bakugo always talking up how great his quirk is, and then so much of the early parts are just is it though? I mean,
this was one of my criticisms with season 2.
He tries to destroy Deku's notebook with his explosion, and it's still intact. it's still mostly intact.
Paper notebook.
He couldn't destroy a notebook, and he expects to be okay.
I can never
several...
take... Yeah, go ahead.
There are several examples of Bakugo's quirk doing essentially nothing in the series. His fight with Deku in the first season, he has a big explosion at point blank range, and like it burns away Deku's clothes, but doesn't like cause any damage to his skin or anything else, you know?
Yeah, but I always, like, to me, that never bothers me, because I grew up watching, like, Avatar The Last Airbender, where people are chucking boulders in fire, and you only die from boulders or get burned by fire when the plot says so. And what I think works about it is that they only try to, like, really portray it as it doing damage to Deku in that one fight, because he has like a burn on his skin, I remember, but actually from then on it never does that again. And I think it's the way I always describe Bakugo's power is that he's actually shooting walls at you, because every time he hits someone they just get pushed back. But
Yeah.
to me, it's never been about like the actual like, oh, is he gonna blow up your body or whatever. It's about the fact that
it's
he
like
always
the
wins.
shockwave without the burn.
Yeah, of course. And later when he does Deku versus Bakugo Part 2, I went back and checked. Deku leaves more of a mark on Bakugo's leg or his arm from kicking it than Bakugo does from doing a point-blank explosion to Deku's face, slamming him into the ground that leads to another explosion. So, like, for me, I can't, like, get into that mindset of, like, well, actually, Deku should be putty.
I mean, I would
Because all the quirks work like that.
I would expect Bakugo to be able to control like his explosion to some degree, which is why he has his outfit. He even explains that his costume is designed so he has better control over his explosions.
I don't think that's how fire to the face works, though. But I understand
We've
what
already,
you mean.
But you know, like that's
failed to a degree.
makes some sense. It doesn't make perfect sense, but it's better than just like I literally want to destroy your notebook and crush your dreams, but I can't even do that.
Well, you gotta make him suffer, right?
We've already failed at dick sucking the series with the
Yeah.
criticisms.
Oh no, big! I love talking about this kind of meta stuff. So no worries.
It just takes me out of it
This was one of
because
the
the
things-
show is probably one of the most consistent series I've seen, and it's incredibly impressive in its consistency with how it keeps in character most of the time, and it keeps expanding the world building while keeping pretty much most, if not everything, intact. It's incredibly impressive to me, and especially when it has such a high level of detail in its art. Especially if you're reading the manga, it's like, oof, that is such rich. It's so rich craft.
This was one of the things I would constantly bring up after season 2 had ended, and it's the same with like Todoroki's fire, for example. In their fight with
The fact that he's
Stain,
not constantly
he,
naked
like,
all the time.
Also that like he burns Stain right in his face, and then there's
Stain's like, I'll get up.
effect. He like coughs. Like there's a whole wave of fire that like hits him directly in the face, and then the fire goes away, and he just goes like.
This is especially hilarious in the season 2 fight of All Might versus Deku and Bakugo, where Bakugo gets kneed in the chin by All Might holding back, quote unquote, gets knocked into a building that like explodes, and he gets back up, and then he gets back up later and starts talking, then uses Bakugo to hit Deku into the ground and creates a crater.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's hard for me to get too worked up about it because it's so silly.
And like it's more of a thing earlier on in the series because it's more lighthearted and
of course, and that's why
boyish,
I can forgive it. Yeah, that's why I can really forgive it.
Currently in the series, it's more willing to show like explicit violence and blood and serious injury.
Yes.
I mean, just take All Might for example.
Like, just in comparison between My Hero Academia and another series like Hunter x Hunter, for example. Like the scales of realism are different. Like My Hero Academia separates itself from most battle shonen in that it mostly operates on a very realistic foundation.
Okay.
And therefore it's a little hard to try to, balance those out with like epic fights and being realistic
and living
and being lighthearted and tackling serious themes.
Yeah.
Well, in Hunter x Hunter, Gon, a 12-year-old boy, can like push lightly and knock a giant bodybuilder man across the room,
before he gets Nen.
Yeah, before he gets Nen.
Well, that's another thing I think is one of the strengths of My Hero Academia is it's really good at balancing its tone. It's really good at going between serious and silly a lot of the time. I think it transitions between those two better than anything or most things I've ever read or watched. Because and a lot of the humor is very character generated. It's not like, I could just have any one of the characters in the room say such a thing. It's like really derived from the unique personality of the person saying, like, delivering
Absolutely.
the jokes. And it's really endearing, and it gives another, charm to the series. And I really love how it can toe that line. It's like a tightrope act that it just continuously, I think, does 9 out of 10 times well.
Mm.
Is just go from like silly to like kind of serious thing. Like, okay, we're now in this, and it's like, oh my god, that's amazing. One of the instances I would think of is when after the Stain arc, when Todoroki and Midoriya are in the hospital, and they're after having this dramatic, confrontation with the officer, and he's
The dog.
and then they're talking about it afterwards on the bed, and then you have like Todoroki. He's just like apologizing because he said something and he doesn't, and then the other two are laughing, and it's like having
He's the hand crusher.
Yeah, he's like, I think I'm cursed. Whenever I get involved with people, their hands get fucked up.
It's like having that shortly after their a really interesting exchange for a superhero story that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. Which is another thing I think My Hero Academia, what makes the series so refreshing, is that there's just so many things in it that I just don't see anywhere else, especially in superhero stories. I'm like, I wish more stories tackled these ideas and really addressed them and really explored them, because seems to be the only one that's doing that. And then but then it's not like being too serious about it either, because then it has like, it treats it with the appropriate amount of seriousness, and then it goes back to its lightheartedness shortly after, and does it at a really good pace, whether you're reading the manga or you're watching the anime, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think My Hero Academia is the only shonen battle series that like consistently gets a laugh out of me. Like the comedy is very solid and has a lot of range and diversity to it.
I like how you added the caveat battle, because the other one you would say would probably be Haikyuu.
Yeah. Those are the
Yes.
two series I think are particularly funny.
These are the only two
compared
series
to
that
their
make me
I
contemporaries.
laugh.
absolutely
On a
agree.
consistent basis.
I think what makes My Hero's comedy work would be that it is passively funny. So, like, usually the joke is either in an expression or a background gag. So, like, for example, one that always
It's subtle.
yeah, it's what makes it funny is that because a lot of good comedy obviously comes from not seeing something coming. So when you catch it, not only do you feel good about it, but you're like, oh my gosh, that character is doing this or saying this, or you're like, oh my, what's this? One of my favorite jokes is when Deku is he's writing down all this stuff. He's trying to solve a math problem, and he raises his hand, and in the corner of the panel you see Bakugo, and he's upset because Deku's talking, and then he gets the question wrong, and in the next panel Bakugo's happy because Deku got shut
Yeah,
down.
he starts smirking. I remember that panel. It made me laugh.
I also love the joke when Endeavor first sees Shoto again after his injury, and then Shoto's like, "That's a nasty scar you've got there." Slurping his noodles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, I get it. It doesn't need to like throw it in my face in order for it to be funny. That's what I appreciate.
Well, I have an example.
Gonna mention
Okay,
also something, because I've been talking now without me saying a single word. The reason also why this show has such a wide appeal in general is because it's so subtle in many of its aspects, and it doesn't push you in the face with anything, with the comedy especially, with the character writing. Everything is just totally consistent and nice.
Well,
So you're saying it's kind of. Oh, I'm sorry. Ace, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up one example of a comedy bit that's kind of also subtly showing some serious content, which is when, All Might, Midoriya, and Bakugo are all on the bus to the battle, where they're to fight All Might for the next test.
Yes.
All Might's just like Bakugo's on the other side of the bus, and Midoriya's awkwardly on the side with All Might, and All Might's just in the front, and then he just like turns around, and he's also looking awkward, and it's just like ... Why not play a word game or something? And then it's just shh.
It feels very human. Like it feels like and it's kind of the thing we brought up about the class is that you have your little cliques, you have your little things. So if you can relate to that, then you can kind of get it's like Ace said, it's very character driven, and it doesn't always feel like there's like a shtick to be played. Like even the characters who had their shticks, like Kaminari, where it's he uses all his power and then he goes dumb. Even that shtick got removed once he had gotten better and grown, and or things like Bakugo always telling people to like die and kill themselves or whatever. Like that actually, like it can be funny. It was funny for me at least because he's so over the top, and especially the dub performance just made it even funnier. But it's nice that you can track that eventually he just doesn't say those types of things as much anymore, and you can track that as growth as well as a funny thing when it does come back. So it's just nice.
Yeah.
It's the thing too that I have with the series that every character has like some kind of gimmick, but the characters are never reduced to just the gimmicks, which generally shonen series have a problem with.
Yeah, none of them are flanderized.
Yes.
Deku, especially as example, has his mumbling, which he has done maybe 5 times in the entire series.
Yeah, because he's gotten more confident and he doesn't do it as much anymore. So when he does do it, characters will even say like, "I haven't seen that in a while. That's classic Midoriya," and you're like, "Yeah, that's true."
Yeah, and I'm like, this is kind of a cute gimmick, though, and I wish I had seen it more. But it happened like 5 times in the entire series.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
Or just like, or subtle things like Ida's hand movements. Like he's always doing them, and you kind of like.
Ida's hand moving is not subtle at all. It's all over
Oh,
the
so
screen.
what I mean is that at a certain point you become it just is a thing he does, and it's not like the point of the scene.
yeah, I get what
guess
you
I
mean.
would
Like
say.
it's
Yeah, it's just his-
well, just for the character, it's like a mannerism that you would expect for someone with a running quirk, I guess. That's
Or someone so strict, someone with all this prestige behind his name and wants to be a class. Like there's heart behind it, so it doesn't always feel like a joke. I guess. If
oh
that
yeah,
makes sense.
it's actually multi-layered. It's like you could believe it's for the running side, or you could believe it's for the very presenty kind of a person side.
Yeah.
It's like it's
Yeah,
like
thank you.
Ida's like the Jordan Peterson of My Hero Academia.
Yeah, on the point of that F brought up about it being very widely appealing, I think My Hero Academia is definitely a series more so than like other shonen that are like very clearly aimed at teenagers, that like it has enough serious discussion of like its themes and social commentary in order to be pleasing to adults, and the characters are realistic and nuanced enough as like portrayals of teenagers instead of just being teenagers, that you can also like relate to them and see some deeper value to following them.
I'd also say there's enough adult characters to latch onto, like Aizawa or All Might, to where there's traits about them that if you're an adult, you can kind of be like, you can kind of just relate to either their demeanor or their appeal or just the way they speak and relate to the kid characters. So you don't feel like you have to attach yourself to the kids all the time. And honestly,
I
as the
also
series
like
has gone
how-
on, yeah, go ahead.
I also like how the adults aren't always like super cool and in charge and just like these kind of pedestals that like I hope we can be like that someday. Like All Might is the symbol of peace. He's the greatest. He's Superman, but he's also like silly and he goofs around, and he's like very wholesome and adorable. There's like moments where he has like these little kind of girly mannerisms.
Yeah, he does
like even
the
invited
figures
Deku
over his
to a
eye.
bento.
Yeah, he's like, why don't you come eat with me, Mr. Midoriya?
Yeah, or I am here unremarkably.
I liked
Yeah.
it when he tried to grab a bite with Endeavor. And then Endeavor
Yes,
just...
and he does like a
why
flip
don't
over
we
him.
grab some tea?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's stuff like that the admirable
And,
part of
yeah.
All Might is that he's this really large, big, buff man who he gets the job done. He says he's the symbol of peace, and in the moments where you think like, oh, this is where the mentor dies and he passes on, no, he is All Might. He is going to win. He said he would protect you, and he does it. And you can respect that aspect of him, but you can also have fun with him. So
So
and with Endeavor as well, he has the joke that's him very enthusiastically
Shoto.
calling out the name of his son.
Yeah.
Which also like has some deeper character implications, because obviously like he has a very particular relationship with his son, which he is trying to mend. Like he's trying to get closer to him, and so he like when he sees him, he's like, Shoto! You know, like, he gets genuinely excited. And,
Yeah.
like, he wants to be acknowledged.
Oh yeah, like
Speaking of social commentary, so to move on a little bit on our topics here, since My Hero Academia is so popular, there's often unremarkable criticism about its writing, like Deku should have been like a Batman and all that crap.
why?
So I thought, let's debunk these and why they suck.
Sure.
So starting with what I just mentioned, Deku being a crybaby, or he shouldn't have gotten a quirk to begin with. Why is this ass? It shouldn't be a criticism.
Oh, I don't know how it's criticism. It's basically saying I want the character to be something else entirely and not really giving any argumentation for why.
Well,
Exactly.
that's the thing, right? A lot of the criticisms against My Hero Academia are just, I want this to be a different story with different themes and more like these other things I've seen before, but also it's nothing unique at the same time. Like on the point of Deku didn't deserve his quirk, you know, like the obvious conclusion is, well, who does deserve their quirks? Because everyone else...
Yeah.
Everyone else is born with their quirks except for him, so he's literally the only one.
Gee, I wonder.
Whoever worked for his quirk.
Gee,
and the topic of his worthiness is like such an integral part of his character that's like built
and his
on
struggle
constantly in the story, that like to ignore all of that completely and like just have your fucking memory erased and only think about the first chapter of the story, you know, or I guess the second is when that really happens.
Well, there's so many. Yeah.
It's absurd.
Well, there's a lot of building blocks to these characters that just keep progressing in a logical manner, and it's like, why? I don't understand why you would expect them to be radically different when we can actually see why they are who they are. We see Deku grow, we see the start of him really aspiring to become a hero because of All Might, and having like rewatched that so many times is really important information because it shows just how passionate he is about being a hero. And then you have the cut from him thinking he's going to be a hero to in the doctor's office being told give up on being a hero, and then it's that, you know, again, a balance of comedy and seriousness where it shows him with this kind of really exaggerated, goofy expression that you can't help but laugh at, even though it's a very dramatic and painful moment for him, but it works still, both ways. And
yeah, because it's still early
it's
MHA.
kind of a life sucks moment,
yes,
you know, which is useful tonally to convey part of what the themes are, which is, you know, that the world is unfair.
And then you have following that him like crying over the computer, watching the same video again, but like it's under a different mood this time, and so that increases the, you know, the relevance of that to him and to us even more. It's like we're constantly emphasizing these repeated important pieces of information about these characters and what matters to them and everything in different ways, and it just keeps going and going. So him going and turning to his mom, can I be a hero too, with tears in his eyes because he was just told he can't be after we've seen how passionate he is about being it. Yeah, that's a really heavy thing to start out with, and it's really well, like, it's lighthearted, but like, I mean, it's like really powerful. It's really impactful way to begin your protagonist. And then shortly after he meets All Might, and then he gets told by himself, the man himself, after being saved by him, give up, go be, but like not in a mean way. He actually says it quite cordially, and he empathetically, like he understands Deku is going to be really upset about this. He is really upset about this, but he's like compromises by saying, go be a fireman or a policeman. Those are also respectful jobs, and they're also heroes. And I thought that was a really good line as well, for him to just say that as well. And then you have, by the at the end of episode 2, after Midoriya runs off to save Bakugo when none of the other heroes can, because Mount Lady can't get through the one-lane street because of how big she is. Kamui Woods' weakness is fire. All the other heroes are too scared to make moves for whatever other reasons. All Might is, like, he's suffering from his injury, and he's using that as an excuse to not jump in. And then Midoriya's, like, sees it's Bakugo, and he's before this, he is, or like when he sees when he sees who's grabbed him, he realizes that was the person who's grabbing him earlier, and that means he's escaped, and he feels blame for that. He blames himself for that, and then so all you can see, it's all these building up things, and then he runs off, and then that inspires All Might to jump into action, and then by the end, he realizes Midoriya does deserve his quirk. It's like 2 episodes, we just got a whole lot of character and world building and everything. It's beautiful, it's amazing, it's powerful, and then the series just keeps getting more complex as it goes.
Especially the scene with the heroes that you just mentioned, like all the heroes are like, someone else has to handle it because limitations, or I'm not strong enough.
Yes.
And it eventually comes back later down the series when All Might, I guess spoilers, stops being the symbol of peace and everything starts crumbling down the lane.
I mean, that happened in the anime.
The question
especially
of, like,
now in the latest manga development.
Yeah, the question of like who will do the thing is also brought up, like it not just with the heroes but like with the common people as well. They're like Shigaraki's backstory in particular, where it's like the heroes will handle this, like let's just look the other way because the heroes will handle it, in the exact same way that the heroes themselves are like some other better hero will handle it, and it's just like everyone is kind of shirking their responsibility away.
Well, like, I guess
when really everyone should be trying to be a hero.
Yeah, you could understand why they're doing it, because they're giving very valid reasons, like my weakness is fire or something, or I'm already dealing with something that's also requires my attention that involves saving people or helping people out in some way.
Well, and here's what's valuable about it is that Deku really isn't that special. Like, legitimately, Lemillion would have done the same thing. Gentle was proven to have done the same thing, and it backfired on him. What I love about Deku is that he is legitimately just in the right place at the right time, and he has the right heart for the circumstance, and it's not about that Deku, like he even says, like, I didn't even do anything, I just made things worse. And, and All Might's like, that's true. And he's like, and because you couldn't do anything, that inspired me to act. And what's important about that is that Deku is a character who inspires others to be better and then tries to be like those people he is inspired by, to the point where Deku's first legitimate win without any help in the series is when he fights Gentle, which is supposed to be the kind of reflection of himself. During the muscular fight, if Kota did not prove that he was still there, then Deku was going to give up. He was like, I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry, All Might, please help me. But when he sees that there's someone in need, he gets the distraction, he wins. Without Eri, he couldn't have defeated Overhaul. In all the circumstances he's in, he needs help. And when we finally get all the way to the Gentle fight, where he's putting in all these moves and all these things that he's learned from all these people he admires, he is finally able to truly be a hero and protect the smile and the person he wants to, all by himself. And it's that long journey of Deku is just a guy. Like, he's not a genius. People like to bring this up of like, well, if he's supposed to be smart, how come he makes this dumb decision, or he doesn't remember he has legs, or all these things? And it's not that Deku and it's not that Deku is a genius. It's that he's a nerd and he just keeps notes of things. Like his first plan is like, oh, throw the thing at the sludge monster and blind it or something, and that doesn't help hardly at all.
That's more a testament to him being passionate and resourceful than him being highly intelligent.
Yeah, of course. And so that's what I always adore about Deku, is that it's why he's my favorite character in the series and one of my favorite characters in general, is that he's just someone who is given. He is blessed, as he says. He's given an opportunity that no one else is, and he feels all that responsibility, but he has the madness in him that allows him to destroy his body. As a hero, the idea of self-sacrifice, right? So he is given a power that will sacrifice himself, and he is willing to do that over and over and over at the long-term cost of himself, at the immediate cost of himself, to the point where, like I said, the reason I fell in love with the series was the Todoroki fight, when you can't tell the point where Deku goes from I'm here to win to I'm here to help Todoroki, because he just naturally kind of flips into it. And it was the moment that, as cheesy as it'll sound, it was the moment that I felt like a superhero character. I was like, wow, if this character existed, he would save me too. And it doesn't feel, and it doesn't feel like a situation of yeah, well, of course they can. It's like, no, dude, this guy's going to break his body 3 times over for someone he doesn't even know, for these children he doesn't even know, for Todoroki, who he's only heard his story, and he's like, I feel bad for him. And I don't know, it's the thing that's so inspiring about him. I always call him the perpetual underdog, because every time he gets better at something, there comes another character or another villain that he has to just destroy himself over and over and over again. And it's what makes it's even now in the current arc, he is still making similar mistakes. Trying not to go into spoilers, he's still making similar mistakes as he did back then, but it's with the same heart and the same knowledge that he's grown to. And it doesn't feel pretentious. And the idea of some people say like, oh, he should have known better than to go in to save Bakugo. What if he got this person hurt? Or what if a hero tried to save him and got them hurt? None of that was in his mind. As he said, a billion things could have went through his mind, but he said, no, the reason I came to help you is because you just looked like you needed saving. And it's the purest expression of what you could be, one, to be a hero. And it's why he's inspiring to so many people, and it's why he's inspiring to me. So that's why I love him.
It's so baffling to me that people saw that spread with you looked like you needed saving and just took it completely the wrong way. Like, how does it even happen?
Well, and I was specifically referring to Bakugo too. But
that's a moment that really shows how deep your understanding or investment in the themes go, because like between the four of us, there was already a lot of discussion about like how Deku was gonna surpass All Might and be the greatest hero, or like what makes him more worthy than Mirio, to go back to like debunking that particular criticism, which is, as Ace said, like the madness in him, that like the constant instinct to save everyone, which the next logical step is to save someone like Tomura, even not like in a way like a talk no jutsu way necessarily, but like in that moment it was saving him from the abuse and manipulation, and as well as the fact that Tomura is the symbol of the society, the hero society's neglect of the weak and unprivileged.
Well, yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say, F?
I wasn't gonna say anything. I just made fun of him saying disprivileged.
Okay, so what I was gonna say is to go to the Mirio point of like who's more worthy. What I like is that everything you said is true, but I also like the aspect of like Deku's just like, hey, so let me just break down the facts here, buddy. So I would have died if not for the magical little girl. You protected her while quirkless, and Night Eye's super dead, and I said that I was going to save everybody. So by all facts and logic, you should probably get the quirk. And the like meaning of the scene isn't like, no, Deku, look at all these ways that you are better than me. He's just like, dude, you did fine, and like sure. And like the point of the scene is like basically like, sure, Deku, maybe Mirio does deserve it, quote unquote, more. But deal with it because you have it. And he just does, and I really like that. I like that Mirio doesn't come in and say like, but Deku, look at all these great things you did. He's like, dude, you gave it your best, and you did it. Like, who cares? It's fine.
And this is the going back to the debunking that particular criticism. What I say on Twitter all the time when this topic gets brought up is like that one scene between All Might and Night Eye, where Night Eye is like, you gave your quirk to a quirkless middle schooler? There should be many people more suited. And he's like, yeah, but a quirkless middle schooler is also suited.
Yep.
Yeah,
also.
Baby.
Yeah. And the reason he said that is not because he said, oh, look how smart and clever he is, or he has these aspects. He says, the boy just wants to help people. Like that's it. That was all it took for All Might.
Wow.
And then he just believes in him that he'll get better, and that's what he says to Night Eye when they do the stamp thing. He's like, what makes you think you can do it? And he's like, he said I could. And it's like, who said you could?
Yeah.
It's like All Might said I could do it, and that's it. That's all it takes.
And it's important to their relationship because like All Might genuinely loves and cares for Deku a lot, and like he sees part of himself in him as well. He's not just connected to him because he thinks this is the most statistically likely person to be most successful with my quirk.
Yeah.
Like there's actual emotion behind it.
Before I lose my 13 threads in my head already, what Ace made me realize about the first 2 episodes too. What I've noticed a lot of people too, over the many years of how My Hero Academia has been popular, is that they will go back to the scene of Dick crying at the computer screen and being like, why is he crying, blah blah, as if he wasn't like a 4-year-old. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, people will like go back more and more in time to find reasons to dislike this series just because it is popular or something.
Or just as it consistently gets better and better, and more people
Yeah,
are like,
yeah.
"Hey, maybe MHA is good." And it's like, no, hold on.
No. That can't be correct. That has to be wrong.
Why is this?
And as I mentioned with the hero stuff, like how in the very first chapter, it was only one chapter, the first 2 episodes in the manga, we
Yeah.
have like this all the heroes are trying to find excuses of like the moment it gets hard to them, they find a reason to not do their hero duties, which just kind of comes back to the last 2 chapters now in the manga, where like there's full-on destruction. We have to spend with this one hero who's like, I'm going to quit now because now things has gone too hard for me.
Yeah.
And
This
in
isn't
the
fun
newest-
anymore.
Yeah, and in the newest chapter we have like this page of this All Might statue where it says, I am not here. So it all comes back to this one thing.
And what's so sad about that is that it's not even like a criticism of All Might. That's a cry for help, because it's not like they
Yes,
don't know why he's
exactly.
not here. And like, and
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
pointed this out. Like the rest of the chapter.
it also means because All Might is the symbol of peace. You know,
Mm.
it means that peace is lost.
Yeah. And a little detail someone brought up that I really appreciated is that you see other parts of the story where like things are being destroyed, but the All Might statue, it doesn't have like graffiti on it. It just has the sign. Like they're they didn't like it's still pristine. They just put the sign on him.
It's a statement. It's not vandalism.
Yeah, which is crazy. That
Well-
even now they still have respect and hope that All Might would do anything. Please come back.
And,
Yeah,
and since
everyone
we're already,
except Shigaraki respects All Might.
yeah, and since we're already geeking out about All Might, one of a pretty common misconception was the symbol of peace dying. He should have died, and I'm like, no, you don't get the story at all if you say that.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
Uh,
Like, My Hero is a lot about concepts and concepts being destroyed or rebuilt or something. And a lot of people just want characters to die. Or
But is he in the
suffer
ground?
heavy consequences, but is he dead? Is he under the earth? And I'm like, no, you don't understand what this series is talking about. And they keep doing it, from going all the way back to complaining about a 4-year-old crying at the computer screen to the literal mentor of the series having to actually pass, completely ignoring the whole hero image. It's
Well, what's a
I
big
have,
problem with that? Oh, go ahead, Critty.
I have a twofold response to what Eva's been talking about. One of which is that, like, one of the reaction channels I tend to watch is RTTV. Is like this group of 5 guys, and like one of them in particular is a big hater of Deku, and like there'll be a flashback to like a moment from season 1 where Deku cried, and he'll be like, "See, he cried again. He's a trash character," and like it's literally a fucking flashback. And it'll be like a moment like in episode 3 when he first was gifted the quirk and like his whole life changed, and he just like he isn't even like whining or fucking like screaming out in tears. It's just like little tears flowing down his face. He's like, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
And they're like, what a fucking bitch. How can he be happy?
Or remember the sports festival, which literally looks like a gladiator stadium, where Deku Hurts breaks his own fingers 5 times, and he holds pretty well back to not cry over it. Like, his fingers are black at this point, and he's
He
not
looks
crying.
fucking
He
crazed.
looks like a fucking manic, and he's still standing.
And,
Like,
and
he
that's
should have
his
passed
and
out
that's
long
his
ago.
saving and that's his save I'm gonna save you face, which I love. Like, I love that, like, whatever he's fighting Gentle Criminal, and he's like, I fought stronger, faster people than you, and like this is the face he's making, basically saying like, I will protect that child's smile, but he looks like a monster against the 2 goofy, we just want to
Prepare
take
to
a
be
selfie.
saved.
Yeah, we just want to take a selfie in UA, please don't kill us, hero.
Yeah, I also like Daiki Yamashita does such a good job with him too, because he can be a really cute voice, but he can also really roar when he
Yeah.
needs to get the angry out, and I'm like, yeah.
Like when he's lifting up Muscular. or just anytime he has to break his body, and he's like, "Don't worry, it's just my arm for the 5th time. We're good."
I watched the Muscle episode so many times because the voice performance is so fucking raw. I watched it like a million times.
It's very powerful.
I love it.
It's my favorite fight in My Hero.
The
Yes, mine
second
too.
response I was gonna give to what F was saying was that like in the fandom, especially like since the past couple years, there's been like this running expectation or like demand that like, when are they gonna kill All Might off? Fucking put him in the ground.
I hate that guy.
And just in general, like really just wanting it to go really dark. Like, oh, I want to see Deku suffer. I want to see all the kids fucking cry and like, oh my god, all their friends are dead. Oh no, like
go to the dark side.
That's what people want to happen, essentially.
Star Wars.
And it's just very, very wrong, especially in the case of All Might, because of how much how much meaning there is in the idea of him not dying.
Yeah.
Like that if Horikoshi was a less inspired writer, he would have killed him off there, because then people would be like, oh, that was such a tragic death, like that's the typical way that trope goes. But like what My Hero Academia is doing is like, what will the symbol of old do after he's like retired, after he no longer has a place?
It's one of my
and like what can he do even after no longer being the support to the world?
And I love what
like he can be there for his students. He can
Yeah.
be a father figure to Deku.
Yep.
And he can just live. He's done his part. He deserves to live.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great
beautiful.
moment. Yeah, that's a great moment with Aizawa.
Yeah, people have a very minimal idea of what consequence can mean. Consequence isn't just to your actions, isn't just death all the time. There's so many edges to it, especially My Hero does explore this with Enji very well, who is like a hero and has abused his entire family, basically. And his consequence comes in his career being ruined and his family hating him, and not him dying. That would have been a lame consequence to this character.
It's a very interesting thing with the most recent chapter. Like after a long time of Endeavor being made more sympathetic and nuanced, and like working to atone for the abuse he inflicted on his family, then like he has this moment where he's lying in bed in the hospital and he's like crying over like like how tragic, how sad he feels about like what he's going through, and then his family comes in like, oh, you're feeling sad?
Yeah.
Well, guess how we feel.
That's actually it. Yeah, exactly. That's something I've always appreciated about My Hero is, one, it's very hopeful, and two, it is not completely idealistic with how it treats people who have done wrong. Like, I love that to this day, Horikoshi, we've seen in an interview where he says, oh, Bakugo's still not fully redeemed, he has to apologize to Deku. Or
well, he did in the most recent arc, in the flashback.
Did he?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I don't think that happened. Please remind
there
me.
was a flashback where Bakugo like finally apologized to Deku, so you might have to reread.
I'm pretty sure there's a
He
flashback where he's just talking to all. Yeah, he's just talking to All Might.
No, he didn't. You fucker.
No, he didn't. He did not.
He didn't verbally go up to Deku and said, "I am sorry." That's what we're talking about.
No, he did.
No, he didn't. No, he fucking. I wouldn't know this.
I'm waiting for him to remove his troll mask. I don't know. I don't believe that you're sincere about this.
No. That didn't happen. I think you dreamed it. Because I've been dreaming that for 4 years now. So.
But
okay, I'm just insane.
Yeah, you're just insane. Because I'm a huge fan of this whole concept of him apologizing, so I would know if that actually happened.
You slept through that chapter and you were like, ugh, whatever. I just never remembered it.
Yeah,
but my main
Stan has clearly forgotten about this part.
Yeah, but my main point, it was just simply that I love that the way characters like Enji or even Twice, when they're given sympathetic parts to them, they're still, or Gentle even, it's not like Gentle doesn't have to like be defeated and get arrested. Like, he still has to face those consequences and also go to the police and like admit that, no, my dream was selfish, all these things. Or Twice even, because I guess we're going full-blown spoilers, right? We're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Structure was abandoned long ago.
With
Yeah.
Twice, he's a character who I'm not saying he had to have died, but the point is that he is a character who is willing to kill children if that's what his buddies want. So I don't think it makes sense to give him the super uber happy ending, and it makes sense that when he's decided like, no, Hawks, I'm gonna go murder everybody. Please, why are you being a jerk about it? You know what? You have to
I just
die.
want to jump in.
Like-
I just want to jump in. Twice and Hawks' dynamic was some of the most tear-inducing back and forth I had reading this series. I love their dynamic so much. Oh my god.
Especially for a dynamic that was established in one chapter.
I was gonna say Shoto's character arc. Shoto's always been like
You baby.
my favorite of the teenage boys, basically,
I love Shoto.
because the way that his arc handles like morally complex and like realistic themes is very very interesting, and it's always taken in very interesting directions. I remember like one scene that really stands out to me is in the when they're teaching the children
Yes.
in season 4, specifically in the manga, because season 4 is bleh. But Endeavor like walks up and he's like, "I'm proud of you, son," and then Shoto's just like, "What the fuck did you just say?" And, and then he's just like, don't come here trying to act like my dad in front of my friends, please go away.
Got his
Aw,
ass.
yes.
And you know, it's not like the manga's portraying it like, "Come on, Shoto, why can't you just get over
Get
it?"
over it,
They're
idiot.
like Endeavor is here like trying to get his good rep back, and then the manga is just like, "Fuck off, Endeavor."
That even happened when Endeavor was crying. They wouldn't let him weep for too long without a joke, and then his wife coming in being like, "Oh yeah, you what? First time?" So
Yeah.
and I love that. It allows the characters to be human, but it never feels like it's putting a halo over their head, being like, "But look how tragic they are. Sure, they murder people, but like, come on, guys, give them a pat on the head and a
It
lollipop."
never compromises itself or its themes
Unlike
for
the
the
other
characters.
stands.
Well, yeah, this is one of the benefits and difficulties of it being in a long form manga, long form story, is that you get to have a lot more natural character behavior that has this kind of natural growth and development period that doesn't just linearly progress. It's not like, oh, here we see at the beginning Todoroki doesn't like Endeavor, he really hates Endeavor, and then soon after something happens, oh, now he loves Endeavor. It's not like that. He warms up to him in very subtle ways, but not really. So like he'll take his offer up from the tournament arc to get work experience, but he won't acknowledge him as like a father or anything like that. So that's some kind of like he's bridging a bit more, but it's like a step forward. And then like it's not for a long time after that he starts making more gradual steps towards his father, and then sometimes it's like a step back or something because he does something that he doesn't like.
Yeah, characters regress
There's
in
a
My
lot of-
Hero
a
all
lot
the
of
time, and I
Yes,
love it.
duality
I love it.
Yes.
Here's one
Yeah.
example I have about Deku is like when he comes back from Gran Torino's training. So he's had such a difficulty controlling his quirk because he keeps using it like the max percentage, and then he finds out he has to try and lower that, so he uses it without burdening everyone around him by breaking his body because he can't control it properly. And his strategy up until now was just, oh, I'm just going to direct it into one part of my body, but then it fucks up that one part of your body, so then that's useless. And how many times can you do that? It's like if you have limited
Yeah.
ammo in your gun, it's like I can only,
you're doing
and you
permanent
don't have any
damage.
spare clips,
I was
right?
gonna say that earlier
And s-
as well, that like it becomes an included part of Deku's character that like he has to learn to not harm himself or like to protect himself before he can protect
Yes,
others.
this is one of the great things about. This is one of the reasons why training with Gran Torino was one of my favorite parts in the story. Aside from Gran Torino being a great character, and the whole thing being like this really awesome learning experience with some humor, and then interspersed with like the Ida's revenge path and Shigaraki. Like it's really well constructed, that whole arc of how everything cuts between each other. So you're not like spending too much time on anything. It's very efficiently written, I think, and very effectively presented as well. But like when he comes back from the training and they're doing like the race course to like as like this kind of like fun exercise to get back into the groove of being back at the university. Deku, yeah,
University.
Deku
And he
The
loses.
academia.
University Academia. Deku is showing off his moves, and everyone's like, "Whoa, Deku's so different now. Because could he do that before?" And it's like he's got so much more control of his power.
That part.
And then he's like feeling it, and he's getting into it, and he's doing awesome things, and then he miscalculates, and he slips off
Yes.
a pipe,
Yeah.
and then he's
That part is always funny to me. Because he's just like jumping around, and then Bakugo's looking at him. He goes like, "Those are my moves. He's stealing my moves," but like he's just jumping.
He's just flipping around.
Man
yeah.
has a lot of pride.
Yeah.
Something I've noticed throughout the series that Bakugo starts out as the prodigy child, the fish in a pond now goes into the ocean and realizes he's a tiny ass fish. That was like his whole thing. But throughout the
Yeah.
series, he has never actually won anything except by default, except like Bakugo versus
Except
Deku
for
2.
the Deku fight.
Yeah, every time he's like gets dragged by Deku into the finish line, or he wins by default because Todoroki didn't want to like, activate his fire side. He gets
And he
kidnapped.
hates it too.
He gets
Yeah.
kidnapped by the villains because they think they can hire him. Then he gets saved by his school comrades. So he gets like constantly his pride is getting hurt throughout the entire time.
I love that rewatching the series, like just paying attention to those details of like knowing who Bakugo is, and then seeing all this stuff happen to him, and then it's like, man, I kind of actually do feel bad for Bakugo because he got humiliated in the newspaper when they took a picture of him with biting his medal and everything, and then and before that he got captured by a villain at the start of the show, and then after that he got captured by more villains, and all of this is making the press. He's
For a guy that has his literal name is Winning Katsuki, he never wins anything really.
It's a great arc for Bakugo to go through all these like really large public humiliations, and he just like comedically angrily gets through them. And then like there's a slow progression of him dealing with that. And it helps that he has friends like Kirishima and everything, which was also really awesome seeing upon rewatch, paying attention to that happen in the background, because I don't think I caught it the first time.
Oh yeah, and the reason it works that you buy the idea of like you buy the hype of his characters because he starts out with all the power over Deku, so you naturally want to see Deku overcome him, and that's when he initially gets humbled, right? But he's still a winner in the sense of like he's dominating all these robots and he's the number one at that. He doesn't win the cavalry battle, but he overcomes the obstacles there. You see him in the USJ where he's like captures Kurogiri, or he takes out all these guys with quick reflexes. So it's constantly giving him it's constantly showing that he is good at what he does. But the story is constantly crapping on him because it's like, no, dude, you're in high school now with everyone. Because he comes into the series thinking that he's the top dog, and then he goes to a school with a bunch of top dogs, and it just brings him down over and over and over again. But he's constantly fighting that, so you understand the spirit behind it, which I really like. I think that's really cool.
That was one of my favorite moments in season 1 after Bakugo and Deku's battle, and then the other teams have their battles, and like he's just like watching, and especially with Todoroki's team.
Just has a mental
Todoroki
breakdown.
just gets like this overwhelming victory, and then Bakugo's just like looking at it like, just I'm so below these people, and then he like walks away kind of angrily, and then he cries. And he was just like reflecting on himself, basically, like the argument that Momo made, like criticizing his behavior in the match. He was like, damn it, I ended up agreeing with her criticism. And then, like, when I saw the ice guy, I thought I couldn't beat him. And you know that got me pretty good.
And that's what makes it so great, because now both Deku and him, even though Bakugo seems like he's starting higher in a higher place, they're both starting at kind of ground zero and trying to get to their goal of being the one who always wins and always saves. So it feels really cool because now he's kind of being placed immediately as his own underdog story, as his own protagonist of his tale. And so that's
the
what
dynamic has been subverted almost. Like Bakugo's become kind of an underdog, and Deku is like an overdog. But like there's serious implications behind Deku being an overdog. It's not like he's just cruising around in the story.
Well, I mean, not entirely, because remember when they're doing the second training with the other class and Shinzo's involved, like Midori's team, I believe his team loses, but Bakugo's win, and Bakugo counts that as like beating Deku.
Yeah.
So he's not. They're not entirely like first place, second place. Bakugo still gets ahead of Deku in areas, and he even when they're training with Endeavor, he even makes it a point to yell out to him. It's like I'm getting further ahead of you.
Yeah, and it's a nice way to do that. Yeah, I agree. And that's a thing that I just love about the characters in general, which is that a lot of them, because My Hero is so dedicated to its theme of like heroism and what does it mean to be a hero, you can't, like, if we were to discuss like the concept of heroism in MHA, you can't talk about that without eventually going over a specific character who embodies their version of
Yeah,
heroism. So it's not just that Kirishima gets a cool fight in Overhaul and then you're just like, ugh, why doesn't Kirishima get more cool fights? Kirishima embodies a version of heroism that no other character gets, because his version is, I am terrified, I don't have the ability of Bakugo or the drive to just run in like Deku to save someone, but that's okay, that doesn't mean I'm less of a hero, and because I'm afraid, I run in. And he gets to have that all to himself, so he gets to embody that. Or Jiro gets to embody that heroism can come in just giving people a smile or using your abilities to lift people up, and she gets to keep that version of what does it mean to be a hero. And it makes the class actually feel like they matter, and not just like, oh, early on in the series, we're going to give cool fights to the characters, and then obviously as the story progresses, you don't see them anymore. They actually contribute to the overall story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
like that.
what makes these things feel meaningful. That like why I care about very minor characters in My Hero Academia more than I care about like more major characters in a lot of other series, is because the general logic of shonen reader community, and I guess partly the writers too, is very action oriented. Like, we got to give certain amount of spotlight to this character, they got to have like a big moment of triumph, they got to do this and that and that, and then people will like them. But like if you just add like a little bit of a theme
Or just
to
a meaning.
any of those moments, then like it's immortal. It's immortalized.
Like, one of the interesting things I like to think about is that, and this could be a bit like speculation, but it is more a community kind of story than like a specific character. Like, Deku is the protagonist, but like it shines so much light on all the other characters a lot, and like we'll even go an entire arc without going on Deku.
Yeah,
So
sometimes he's not
Deku
even
has
the
had very
protagonist.
little
so
screen time
it's not
recently.
really like, even though it starts out with the narration like, this is how I became the greatest hero ever, right? It's like, well, it's more about just what does it mean to be a hero than necessarily, oh, how did Deku become the greatest hero?
Also, like, friendly reminder that even though Bakugo was like absent for 50 chapters, he even won the popularity poll again.
Oh yeah, of course.
After he has been like top one since the second popularity poll, and he hasn't been shot down since.
And I wanted to bring up that it's just crazy that My Hero will just be like, okay, babysitting arc for
Exactly.
our two fighty boys. Like,
And
I love that. Yeah, go ahead.
Or in the Endeavor Agency arc, it's like an arc that is mostly sitting around a dinner table having like
Family
uncomfortable
drama.
tension with your abusive father. And like what other action battle series would you have that, where they're just
then,
like
of course,
sitting
the
around
Culture
and kind of
Festival.
talking about like, so how are you gonna atone to your family who you've been abusing for all these years? And he's just like, I'm not sure.
There's
Yeah.
like,
And then, of course, yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
go
there's
ahead.
so much like contrast in the show that I haven't even cut into yet. Like, I don't even know. I had to start with this. I guess it's especially very obvious, like Deku and Bakugo, of course, where they start and how they develop. Like Deku becoming getting his power, but physically destroying himself over time, and Bakugo's pride being hurt over time by just public shaming, basically, or that Deku has to focus his power into his legs, while Bakugo is always on the arms. Bakugo's hero name is Dynamite, which just goes to All Might. Meanwhile, Deku had to choose a name that is not close to All Might because he has to be different from All Might. There's so much contrast throughout the entire series.
That's just like two characters, and that's
Yeah.
just like the main characters. But then you have like Gentle's also a parallel to Deku, and then you
Oh,
have
the
Kirishima,
foils!
who's part of
Don't
is
even get me started on the
parallel.
foils. Like Deku and Bakugo are foils, and Angie and All Might are foils, and then we have Shigi and Deku. They're also foils to each other, and there's so many of them. I could gush about it all
Even
day.
Bakugo and Endeavor are
They are
foils. to
foils
each
too.
other.
Yeah, they're all the children. Oh my god, I can't. It's so many foils. It's crazy. But one of my favorite, the most overlooked part of the series is just the imagery of the scars.
Yes.
Like one of my favorite pages in the manga too is like in Overhaul when right after Deku grabs Eri with his scarred hands, and she said his hand was gentle even though it was completely fucked up scarred hand.
Yeah,
but
it's
she's
the one that he
like,
beats villains with.
yeah, even though because she's used to all mental, psychological, and physical abuse, so even a gentle hand that is full of scars is like heaven to her. I'm like,
Oh.
damn,
Well, and
that's
that-
You could even say that like Eri is used to Overhaul with his like clean freak nature, always wearing gloves, always being very clinical.
yeah,
Literally operating on her.
yeah.
Whereas
Versus
Deku is human.
like,
Deku's human. He takes the beating for you and will do all this stuff. And sure, it looks messed up, but it's a hand that is loving. Like, it's kind, is what she says.
Exactly.
Oh, so good. I love it so much. So many foils.
Yeah, and also we touch on it, just kind of passively, but just the heart of MHA. Like, I know, like, a lot of series that, you fall in love with, you can obviously be like, it's got a lot of heart, and most good fiction does have heart. But I just really like how, I don't know, just like the way it's described, it's like, it's kind, it's gentle. A lot of the ways that characters look at each other, the expressions that Horikoshi will give them, just add a lot of humanity and just quietness to it that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I think it has a beautiful soul, so to say. It handles very human and empathetic kind of characters, like tone. It has like a very hopeful atmosphere, and it's filled with optimism, and without like being naive or without being ignorant. It's understanding and kind and strong in all of its messaging.
Horikoshi also said in this interview where he also said the thing with apologizing Bakugo, that most of the drama in this series comes from interactions he has had with other people and their struggles in life. So I'm like, he probably knows a lot of damaged people if that's the case. Because it feels
He
very
definitely
realistic.
feels very down to earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he'll dedicate 2 whole chapters to just letting Deku's mom kind of just explain her grievances, and I like the fact that it's not that they convince her by being like, don't worry, we'll do better next time. Like, none of that actually convinces her. It's the fact that All Might, it's not that he bows and says like, oh, I'll do better. It's that All Might is bowing for her son, and she's like, how could I take away this happiness from him? Like, this is the thing that she even says, like, you're his reason for living. And I just love that it's not about like, oh, is Deku gonna go back to UA? It's about how does this character
and Deku
get to
even
go ahead.
Like he accepts the idea of not going back to UA.
I love that.
Yep.
She's like, does it have to be UA? Like, can't you go to a different school instead? And then Deku's
like,
just
"You're right."
like, yeah, I can, because see, like, even if I go to a different school, what I've done, like what I've accomplished, it doesn't change.
Oh my god, that scene is great on so many
Yeah.
levels. Again, you could just do a My Hero Academia podcast because there's so much depth, there's so much density.
That's what we're
No,
doing.
I mean like an entire series, or like not just one.
That's what I'm gonna be doing.
Because you can just break down everything into so many details. But like for that scene in particular, like they think Deku is running off in a huff, but he comes back with like a paper like showing that he can go to other schools. It doesn't have to be UA. He will still find a way to be a hero because he now has the power to be one. And that's what he wants to do. And he's showing his mother, okay, fine. If you don't want me to go to UA, I'll go somewhere else. I'm still going to be a hero.
And I appreciate that All Might's able to kind of dance around the I gave him the power thing by just being like, hey, it's my fault. I took advantage of these things. I want to make him a hero. So basically just like saying it without saying it, which
Yeah,
it's not
he's
like...
it was my selfish decision.
Yeah. And also, like, she wasn't upset that he got a power. She's just upset that, or like that he has a power now, obviously.
It's funny that
she
you bring
doesn't
up
know
that
it was
scene
given to
about him bowing to the mother and everything and saying, it's basically the promise he has to make is...
Because that's going to be
Yeah,
awkward.
I was going to lead into that. The
Oh,
promise he made was,
no.
I will protect him. I will make sure nothing bad happens to him.
He doesn't
And
get hurt, and
well, this is... Okay, I'm expecting her to show
now
up.
he's not
I'm
doing so well.
expecting-
Me too.
I'm
I was thinking about that
expecting
too.
her to show up and there to be quite the drama.
I'm so excited for that just because I always appreciate...
She might slap him
Oh,
right
that
in
would
the
be
face.
so good.
Oh,
I'd
I
love
would be
it.
fucking sick, dude.
Well, we're already getting, like, boss mom
And
vibes with Rey, so let's
And he's
continue.
weak enough. He's weak enough that she could kill him.
Let's not do that.
That's how All Might is gonna go out.
He could-
God,
I'm gonna
can I
cry
just
if I see All Might be sad. That
just reminded me of some of the other goofy humor in anime that's just like really takes me out of it. Is like, oh, you got hit so hard, now your soul is leaving your body or some shit. I'm like, thank God, and this series doesn't do that. Like the closest it's ever done to something weird like that was like when Bakugo, like Midori is talking really excited.
Murders Deku.
Yeah, like he stabs him with something in his head and he's bleeding and everyone acknowledges it. I'm like, I thought that... Okay, I was gonna leave that because I thought it was metaphorical, but he literally did it. I don't know what the hell is going on.
Yeah, that just goes back to I think the One Piece influence in My Hero that kind of has faded away a lot of the times. But early on in the series, like things like people still to this day get confused about the whole All Might Steam thing because it's so ridiculous. This idea of like I'm just like puffing up like a dude at a beach who's got a gut, but you have like smoke peeling off you and all this other stuff and people can see the smoke, but also your eyes are like black holes that can shine like...
Well, yeah, the funniest one of the funniest parts about him hiding his identity, and again, this is just a great way of using this premise of like, I have to hide the fact that I am no longer so strong that I can keep that form anymore, is at the end of the fight with Shigaraki and the villains and they all escape, the steam is still covering him. And Kirishima is running over to them, and he's like, "Deku, are you all right?" And he's in his head, All Might is thinking, "Oh, I'm so happy that you care so much for your friend. Crap, he's getting closer."
Yeah, that's good, and that's a great thing about Kirishima is that you can even see back during then just like his entire character arc, like whenever he's in the bus and he's just like, oh, you know, my quirk's nothing flashy, it's nothing great, and then whenever he goes to attack Kurogiri, you can check and he has like this Bakugo's coming in hot, and then Kirishima has this like fearful expression and he's sweating, so you can see that even back then it's like it's the fear thing, but you jump in anyway. And we know that Horikoshi planned this because he even says like, oh, if you go back to Deku's exam, you can see Kirishima's flashback design in the background beating up robots.
Damn.
We have talked a lot, but we haven't even mentioned the villains hits once. We have like 7 minutes left.
I was literally about to say that. Like,
but I'm glad because people always... I'm glad because the people always talk about the villains as if they're the only good thing. So I'm glad we talked about the
we
villains
should
there's a
do
lot
it
of
the next
arcs.
few minutes before we are done because our editor will otherwise be angry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know, someone else has to start. I'm like...
I think My Hero Academia has a very strong villain cast.
Whoa!
And, especially its main villain, Shigaraki Tomura.
Who is my favorite.
I was a big fan of him since season 1 when he was first introduced, because there was already very interesting implications made about his character at that point. Like when they first attack USJ, Shigaraki is like, "We are tired of this system of heroes because heroes are just tools of violence. Like you're really just like government authorized weapons and shit." And then All Might's just like, "You don't really believe that shit.
He got me.
You're just saying it." And then Shigaraki is just like, well,
It's
you
funny,
got
he
me.
does start out like his...
I just hate everything.
He starts out like a man-child that's just like, I want to cause chaos, but like it's like a villain without a cause.
Yeah,
he
like
just wants
throwing
an
a tantrum.
excuse to do it, and then he grows into developing a reason for it.
This is why I want to kill everybody. Got it.
Yeah, like at first he's just like lashing out, like I hate All Might, I hate heroes, I hate this society. Let me just fucking wreck shit. And then he starts to think like, why do I hate everything? Oh, it's because the society has done ill by me, and because it fosters wrong in the people.
There are cracks in the system.
And I like that I like that as the series goes on, it gets, because I think we forget that Shigaraki didn't initially want to destroy everything. He wanted to kill All Might. Then he was like, this is why I want to kill All Might. Then he was like, oh, because I want to kill All Might, I want to destroy the system. But then eventually, after the overhaul arc and all that stuff, he's like, actually, I kind of just want to kill, like, everything. Because I don't like it, and it makes me mad. And I can explain to you why it makes me mad, but ultimately, die.
What seems to me, because he's like mostly lost interest in All Might at this point,
Yeah,
because
it's crazy.
he's realized that like All Might no longer plays a part in his motivations. Like he doesn't have an effect anymore. Killing him wouldn't help his cause.
So
Well,
since
here-
he's my favorite in My Hero, I actually have to gush about him now. Because how My Hero starts out is usually in Shonen you have an established villain group from the get-go, but in My Hero there's like no one. There's Shiggy and Kurogiri and the big evil overlord we don't really know yet. I know nothing about yet. And Kurogiri, spoilers, is just a Nomu, which you only find out way later. So he's basically all alone. So his first goal in the series is to make a group so people take him fucking seriously. So he starts out as this man-child, as everyone knows. That's the thing too, which I've thought about a lot, is that the series introduces us to Shiggy through the hero's eyes, and through the hero's eyes, he's just a man-child throwing a tantrum, or you're just a power-hungry idiot because whatever. They don't take villains that seriously. They just think they're evil for the sake of evil. But then later we find out that Shiggy is actually deeply mentally ill and has been molded by this evil underground overlord, evil guy, to be the next one. So it has a lot of hand on your face controlling stuff, as you can tell by his design from the get-go, that he that he is blinded to the truth, basically.
Well,
There's this the juicy building up to his character that I love so much.
Even the names of like heroes and villains portrays a very certain black and white morality, but like in the story with how it's developed, it becomes like this very dark irony of how like these people who are basically disadvantaged, disenfranchised, and
or
like
disabled
need help
in some
can
ways
be called villains, while like some people who maybe aren't so great, like Endeavor, can be called heroes. And there's this really great, one of my favorite pages in the most recent arc, was like when Shigaraki and Deku have confronted each other, and Shigaraki's just like, I don't care if you understand. That's what makes us heroes and
That
villains.
sounds like one of my favorite lines in the series.
It's
I don't
it's
care.
an incredible
you don't
line
understand.
because I don't care if you understand, because like I'm just gonna do it anyway.
and I like that he's petty enough to be like, except for what my friends want, which I love.
Yeah.
I like that
It also means like,
yeah, go ahead.
if Deku did understand Shigaraki's motives, then he would no longer be a villain. But like he doesn't care about that. Like he's fine being the villain because
he looked at his past and he accepted it.
He's not looking to be sympathized with by the people he sees as in the wrong, as the enemy.
I have so many thoughts.
Go for it.
God. So where do I start?
Fast.
Freaking twice. This is making me think of Twice, when his whole arc, because quirks are a double-edged sword, and Twice really embodies that with his whole side arc of his own. Like, you see his backstory, and he creates clones, and then the clones get out of hand, and then they start wondering who the real one is, and then the takes over hostage, and then he goes crazy because they almost try and kill him, and it's a traumatic event, and it's like that's why he's having such a struggle with keeping himself intact mentally, and the mask helps him because it's like this was a way for him to create a new identity for himself to latch onto so that he can stay whole in a sense, but it's not like a perfect way of doing that either. That was a really neat idea. I love Horikoshi.
Yeah. I love how all the core members of the League of Villains like represent very different things. Like there's Twice who joined the League of Villains because he's like part of the disenfranchised group and he found solidarity there. And then there's like Spinner who joined because it seemed cool to him, like it was a trend and he wanted to be part of a movement. And then there's like Dobby, who's like a lone idealist who has his own motives and his own agenda and is like really just using
The
them.
interesting parallel with Dobby and Shigaraki is, like you were saying before, Shigaraki wanted to see All Might fall, and now we are turning to Dobby, and that's currently what he wants with Endeavor.
He wants to see Endeavor
and they're
fall,
both
yeah.
they both at the time they take the position of the number one hero.
And then there's Toga, who is a huge component to one of the themes we discussed earlier, or that F brought up about mental health. In that, like, as I said, quirks have a big effect on personality and like just how you are as a person. And Toga's quirk being related to sucking blood, it's like naturally a part of her instinctual drive to want to suck blood of things, because it's literally like part of her biology, like part of who she is. But because of that, she doesn't fit into society, and she's grown more and more unhealthy ways of expressing her feelings, leading to actual murder instead of just like, let me lick your blood.
Well, it's
Right.
fun. It's fun that she or not fun. It's interesting that
It's fun.
it's fun to just suck people's blood and take their powers. It's interesting that like she takes Deku's blood when they're in the forest, and it's like, oh my god, this is a really special blood. I feel warm and fuzzy and everything. And then that connects later on to Ochako. They meet during the Liberation War, and she's like, I thought we could understand each other because we like the same boy and everything. And again, so many connections to things. That's all.
As I said before, contrast. It starts very, I wouldn't say it's in My Hero starts very black and white, but it starts more black and white and it goes more gray over time, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
Yeah,
lots of gray, many shades.
And especially with each arc and like the big confrontations between the heroes and the villains, there's notable changes in the dynamics of like how the situations get resolved with each time. Like at first in USJ, it was like a struggle for the students just to survive and just wait for the adults to arrive and take care of the situation. And then after that is basically the Stain arc, where like Ida tried to do something himself, but then also like almost got killed. But he got, instead of the teachers, the adults, he got his peers, his fellow students, and together they managed to like solve the situation. And then there's like Deku versus Muscular, which is like the first time Deku tries to really do something alone. And he comes out victorious in the end, but at great cost to himself. And what's the next big confrontation after that?
There's Kamino.
Oh yeah, I love that one where
Kamino.
they're in disguise and they're sneaking around, and Ida's like basically their watchdog. He's like, okay, I'm going with you, but if it gets too hairy, we're out. And then they get there.
And I like that he does do that. He does accomplish that, because usually you would think like, okay, but like really it's a shonen, they're gonna fight. And I like that as soon as Deku tries to run out and would have probably got them killed, Ida stops him,
That
and that gives
is
enough time for All Might
that
to
is one
show
of my
up.
favorite moments.
Yeah.
Ida's face is just so awesome in that moment. He is as serious as he's ever been in his entire life, and it's such a meaningful moment because he's kind of sort of angry at the same time as protective because Deku was basically last arc when they were fighting Stain telling him the same thing. It's like you should listen to your friends. You shouldn't jump into action like this. And now Ida has to be the one to do it to Deku and everyone. But Deku is like counters it. He's like, I have a plan. And everyone looks at him and is like, what's the plan? And oh my god, it's such a great plan, guys. Go watch My Hero Academia.
And then Ian, as you mentioned, in the the gentle fight that comes in season 4, it's like the first time Deku really has like a perfect even-footed battle against an antagonist, and it's almost like Deku has become the antagonist from Gentle's point of view, because Gentle was just like trying to do his thing, and then Deku like caught on to him, and now he's like attacking him.
Yeah, they frame it as if Deku is the freaky madman. Like they're like they
Yeah.
even say. I love the part where it's like I like that as you said, Bakugo's his fame comes from like, oh, he got captured or he was this or that, and Deku's is he's that weirdo who breaks his fingers. We shouldn't get involved with him. He's mad. And that's still
like,
and that's still a thing because we all think like we see him, but they've only seen the sports festival. So even in Endeavor Agency, 200 plus chapters later, Hawks is like, "Oh, you're that kid who breaks his fingers, right?"
Yeah.
It's like no.
each battle, each climax is like distinctly fundamentally different from the last, and like serve as like a flag placed in the story. Like a big benchmark for where we stand with the characters and the world and the themes.
I think since Pro Hero, we have just been going through banger arcs back to back. Like there's no
They're
stopping
all
at this
bangers.
point.
What are you talking about?
I mean, especially since
It's,
I had the series like before Pro Hero. I had like a 8, and now I have it as a 10. So
Yeah.
that's the difference you're talking about here.
Yeah.
No, I
It
definitely
was like a strong 8 to begin with,
Mhm.
and then it was like a 9 by Kamino, and then it was like a strong 9 by
Before MMA.
Overhaul, and then I upped it to a 10 after
Well,
School Festival.
yeah, School Festival was like a 9 for me. It was like unique. It was probably the most unique arc that I've seen out of anything, because I've just like never seen anything like that before in any other media. It just did something really special with all these aspiring heroes like getting together, and you have just
think
Deku
it's got
acting
a
in the
few-
background to try and keep everything like nothing from going wrong essentially.
Under control.
And it's like, look, this is him showing off how competent he is, while it's like for the reason of like Eri. It's like that's what it's grounded in more than anything, is it's to make sure he can get to Eri
Very
and
intimate
keep his
stakes.
promise to her
Yeah.
and make her happy. It's like we care about Eri, we care about Deku, we care about their dynamic together and what the future will hold for him, how he acts and how she perceives him, and he needs to be there for that. And Gentle is here, and he's being a jerk, he's getting in the way, and wow, what we gotta stop this guy.
What's amazing about My Hero Academia is that like there can be an arc like Kamino where it's the biggest battle for like the fate of hero society, and it's got massive reverberating effects throughout the world, and that can be like equally as emotional as just like Deku fighting this YouTube prankster to make sure that like this little girl can have her first happy day in her life.
Candy
basically.
apple.
Yeah.
And I guess a final point from me, just because I know we'll have to wrap up soon, is just basically if you really want to track Deku's progression, look at how he deals with Koda whenever he's trying to explain to him like what heroism is and stuff. He can't look at him in the face. He's stuttering. He's like, my friend didn't have a quirk. Like, he can't do it. And then now look at where he is now after joint training, where Eri's like, I don't feel good about myself. My quirk is dumb and bad. And Deku gets on his knees. He looks her in the eyes and he's like, Eri, don't you realize you saved me? You're very special. Your quirk isn't scary. It's like a knife. You can make yummy food. And he encourages her. He lifts her up, and he's not thinking, oh, I wish someone else were here to do it. He is now confident enough to be the hero to a new generation of kids, and that's incredible. So.
Yes, and
Yes.
we should wrap it up. I think we have to do a part 2 eventually of this because I haven't
We
talked
should
about
do it
all
more
of the shit I was going to talk
structured
about.
so we could focus on the details of the arcs and the characters.
Well, yeah, I mean, we will do
Just
that
like
next
a
time.
Deku podcast, a Bakugo podcast.
Oh god, no. Next time we're just
Well,
going to
I'm
talk
glad
about
we
the
talked
manga.
so much, at least about the themes and
Yeah.
what makes the writing of the story
Next
special.
time I definitely
rather than
yeah.
just like listing our opinions.
Next
on
time
it,
I want
like,
to talk more.
I gave this arc a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, next time I want to talk more about the manga arcs, for sure.
Yeah,
We
of
didn't
course.
talk about the art
Oh my
at
god.
all.
We should
We didn't talk
set
about
aside
all.
an art one.
Who's your favorite character?
Aizawa.
Kidding. We'll save that for later.
Shiggy.
Deku.
It is
All
like a-
Might.
See, you all have a different one. It's actually amazing. Yeah.
And
And-
we won't talk about the art in depth, but it does have the best art of a weekly Shonen
Facts.
Battle
And
series.
Horikoshi is my favorite
ever.
person
Yes.
ever.
Oh my god, we didn't even talk about all the messages he does that are just the best.
I like that anytime he screws up in the manga, he makes a Twitter page of his character, his like little hand icon getting murdered by the characters because he screwed up.
Oh shit.
We also didn't talk about any of the pages where he actually goes really in detail on the costumes and the quirks of the characters.
Yeah, that would never come up in the series, but it's like, it's here if you want
It's
to know
like,
about
thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
It's the same with, like, as you said, Kirishima's arc was planned very early on, as you can see, like, his early design before he even became, like, a named relevant character.
Yep.
Which just shows that, like, Hori is, like, really planning out the internal depths of these characters, even if it's not shown or won't be shown for a long time.
So, MHA good. That's my final point.
Image is really good. Stop underrating it. Read the manga. That's it. That's the
Yes.
conclusion.
MHA Best New Gen. Put that in the
I
title.
think you are.
Maybe I will.
With a question mark and 2 exclamation marks, maybe a dollar sign.
Jesus Christ. Okay, well then, it was great to have you guys. I will probably make a return of this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for
Yes.
having me. It was
Thanks for
great.
having
Yeah, it
me as
was
well.
great to have you. And goodbye.
All right.
Goodbye.